Hi, Michael here. In this video I want to talk about how to learn code fast as a beginner based on my experience of over 20 years in software engineering. The great thing about learning to code is that there's so much information out there. Tutorials, blogs about every language under the sun. However, this can be a bit overwhelming. Technology is one of those careers if you don't keep up, you'll be left behind, and I could find myself out of a job. There are new releases of languages coming out on a yearly basis at least, and almost new languages popping up as frequently as that. So if you're just starting out, here are some tips on how to learn to code. The first step when learning programming is quite obviously to pick a language. Now there are lots of languages. You will get a lot of people saying this language is better than that. People kind of tend to go with what they know. I've observed there's a bit of a tendency with developers to really identify with the particular technology that they have spent a lot of time learning. My recommendation is that as an engineer, you should be picking the right tool for the right job. So if a certain language is good, then yeah, by all means use that technology to develop a solution. Now, just for full disclosure, I am a C# developer, which is in the Microsoft stack, as it were. The languages I would say that have played a big part in my career are Java and C#. I don't think you would go far wrong learning one of them, but let me give you some criteria which you can use to pick the language you want to learn. My criteria for picking a language are: is it widely used? Is it going to be around for a while? And are there jobs in it? Technologies do die. Visual Basic was a thing earlier on in my career. Now it's not so much. I started out in technology working as a Lotus Notes developer. Around the millennium it was big. You got paid silly money for it. But then it got to a point where you would do a search on the job board for London and there would be just one job. Which brings me to my next point. It's more important to make a decision and to start learning a language than spending a lot of time deciding on which language to learn. Because whatever you choose, you're going to have to either update your skills because the language has changed, or learn a new language, probably within 5 years and definitely within 10. However, rest assured this process will be easier than learning the first time because there are commonalities in all languages. Most of the time, if you're an experienced programmer, you can look at a piece of code in a language you don't know and you can figure out what is going on. Once you have decided on the language, you need to set a schedule, how you're going to fit learning to code in the fastest possible way as a beginner around your daily activities. The reason for doing this is if you don't, you will find more often than not other things get in the way of you learning to code. To this end, I want to share a few principles that I have found useful in helping me to find time to learn to code fast. My first suggestion would be to dedicate a few minutes on a frequent basis, ideally daily, to learning to code. So start with a few minutes every day and then ramp up as time goes by. The advantage of this is that from a memory point of view, you're reinforcing what you're learning, and you kind of build up momentum. From my own personal experience, when I was transitioning from being a Lotus Notes developer to a .NET C# developer a while back, I used to read my book on C# on my 20-minute train journey into London every day. Now, spending a few minutes every day is really good, but it isn't going to make you a software engineer very soon. So what you also want to do is schedule in a longer session over an hour or maybe a few hours, at least once a week, where you're at your computer trying to code. Okay, so you've decided on a language, you've found some time in your daily or weekly schedule. Let's talk about what resources you should use to learn. I've found if you want to learn to code fast, you need to use a variety of resources. Coding is a practical skill. For example, reading a book on how to drive a car will not teach you how to drive a car. Similarly, with coding, you need to be using resources in a way that is mostly interactive. i.e. you trying out code rather than just watching or reading. Having said that, a good book is great, and I always have a book. Online courses from Udemy and Pluralsight are great. But what I would also do is refer to the official documentation. There's stuff there that is often not mentioned in books or courses, just for the sake of brevity. Have targets with your learning. Say I'm going to complete one section of the course by the end of this week, and those accomplishments will push you on. Things you want to aim for when taking your first steps as a programmer. Writing your first Hello World program. Everybody does this. This is simply a program that prints out Hello World in a window or on the command line. Many languages have sites where you can type code into the browser window and it runs. This is good for starters. However, you may want to install what is called an IDE on your computer for more complex programs. Visual Studio Code is a free IDE which can be used for many languages. As soon as you have done a few tutorials, you should be thinking about building something. Most business applications involve displaying something on screen, saving to some kind of storage, which could be a file system, database, or over the network to via an API, and then at a later stage showing this information. So kind of focus on doing something around that. A simple example might be a to-do list, all the way up to an e-commerce site. When building your application, you're going to hit problems. Search out how to fix them. StackOverflow.com is a great site and used by developers all over the world. Don't feel bad. Technology is a vast subject and nobody out there knows all the answers. Once you have a good basic grasp of your chosen language and maybe built a few simple applications, you want to focus now on improving and being able to do more complicated things. One way to do this is to look at applications that have already been built on GitHub. GitHub is a place where developers from around the world store their code. The great thing about GitHub is that it includes code of a high standard from professional software engineers. For example, Microsoft has made a lot of its code open source and it's stored on GitHub. Once you have a bit of knowledge, this is a great way to improve your knowledge of your chosen language. I would search the phrase top GitHub repositories in your chosen language. Pull them down and see if you can understand what is going on, see how code is structured professionally by software engineers. Okay, so those are my tips on how to learn code fast as a beginner. If you are interested in a career in software engineering, please check out my other videos on how to become a software engineer without a CS degree and faster starts into software engineering. And see you on the next video.